WALTHER. Not only do they make objectively very pretty guns, but they're also super nice to shoot and boringly reliable. Today we're here to talk about the Q5 and the PDP, both in steel frame, and why one of these is permanently leaving my safe. You guys have watched me shoot matches from the very beginning. At least some of you have. Yes, this video is still on the YouTube channel. You can watch me prance around at my first official USPSA match shooting my Glock 48 from concealment. And if you've been around here for a little while, you also watch me progress after I decided to step in with both feet and buy my first ever competition focused gun, the Q5 in steel frame. And finally, you watched as I started using my WALTHER PDP 4.5" in steel frame, and now that I've become a lot more comfortable with both of these guns, I've learned that I definitely prefer one of them over the other, and one of them has been kind of moping in the safe for far too long, so it's time to say goodbye. Wah, wah. Both of these guns cost about the same direct from WALTHER, but the Q5 has been around a lot longer, so it's not impossible to come by them used for a steel, which is exactly how I ended up with the Q5 initially. My particular Q5 came with a number of aftermarket features already installed on it, like an Overwatch precision trigger, a red 1 MOA SRO, and LOK grips. So I never really got to experience this gun bone stock. Some of the things that I liked about the Q5 initially was that although it was a giant gun, the grip itself actually fit in my hand really nicely, especially with the LOK grips. The size of the grip is actually a common gripe about the Q5, but I liked that there wasn't a lot of dead space below the bottom of my hand. And of course, I enjoyed how it shot, but right away, there was something about it that was really unlike any other gun I've shot. It felt bouncy. Prior to shooting the Q5, I never would have described recoil as bouncy. It was always sharp, snappy, or repeatable, and I kind of chalked it up to me being completely new to the gun, and I pressed on. I ended up trying a number of different recoil springs over the course of a couple of weeks because I heard people say that the Q5 was notoriously oversprung. But anything other than the factory spring led to light strikes and often caused my gun to fail to go into battery. So I ended up just going back to the factory recoil spring, and eventually the bouncy feeling became less of an issue as I became a little bit more comfortable with the gun. Right around that time, WALTHER reached out to me and asked if I wanted to try their PDP in steel frame. I was very interested to try it, mostly because I really loved the build quality and mechanical accuracy of my Q5, but I was still dealing with that kind of bouncy feeling and recoil. So I was really curious to learn that if I got my hands on the 4.5" PDP steel frame, if it would essentially be a more balanced version of my Q5. So straight out of the box, the PDP in steel frame was noticeably less bouncy. I actually took it on a range trip with a couple of friends and asked them to shoot the Q5 and the PDP in steel frame side by side, and all but one of them said that they preferred the PDP steel frame more, and I tend to agree. However, straight out of the box, I was having some very serious trigger reach issues. The PDP-F exists for a reason, and that is to reduce trigger reach primarily. I'd actually never had trigger reach issues like this before. I was constantly failing to disengage the trigger safety, and as a result, having to compromise my grip, which is super not ideal. So I took cues from the aftermarket features that came on my Q5 and asked LOK if they'd be willing to send me some Veloce? I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced, but it's one of those two, I think. And I ended up stealing the Overwatch precision trigger from my Q5, and voila, trigger reach issues, be gone. I really must say, and LOK didn't ask me to say or do anything in exchange for these grips or anything, but I must say I love these grips. Not only are they so pretty, but they reduce the front to back distance on the grip just enough for me to maintain a solid grip. Seriously, big fan. And I'll probably eventually have to do a separate short video specifically on these grips alone, because I could definitely go into a lot more detail, but back to the topic at hand. Which of these guns is permanently leaving my safe? You guessed it, the Q5. I'm honestly, it's kind of sad to say that. I think it's such a beautiful gun, and I really have enjoyed having it, but it just doesn't get used anymore. At the end of the day, this is still an awesome gun and is incredibly enjoyable to shoot, but now that I have the PDP-SF 4.5 inch, the Q5 hasn't really seen much range time. Thanks for watching this video. Let me know down in the comments below if you knew exactly which one I was going to pick from the very beginning, or if my decision surprised you. And also, let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are on these guns. Have you shot both of them? Have you shot the PDP in steel frame? And if so, which size have you tried? Because I think that I might prefer the 4.5 inch, but what do I know? I haven't shot either of the others. I've just shot my Q5, and I feel that the longer barrel, the longer gun in general, is a little unbalanced.